Good morning. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel.
And I'm Rod Haynes. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. Those of you here in person and those with us online. All who come in the spirit of goodwill are welcome here.
It is good to be together. It's good to have a place, that is, to make a place, where we can acknowledge what is real in our lives, while also setting aside just enough to make room for healing. There is so much pain and loss in the world today. Maybe no more or less than 2 years ago, 80 years ago, or 800 years ago, but comparing pain is usually beside the point. The point is that here, in our midst now, there is pain and worry and loss, and there is an opportunity to lessen that by holding it gently and remembering simply to care for ourselves, to honor the earth, skies, and seas, and to love one another.
So thank you for being here for one another. If you are here with us on Zoom after the service, we will unmute your microphones. So please stay to chat about the theme of today's service. And if you're new, please take the opportunity to introduce yourselves. And if you're not new, please take this opportunity to make others feel at home.
If you're here in person after the service, we will unmute you as well. So take a moment to look around now and spy someone you don't know who you can introduce yourself to as you invite them down for coffee after the service. Go ahead.
Okay, class. Please take a look at the announcements in your order of service.
I invited them. Yeah.
Stifle yourselves.
Mute.
This is fun. Please take a look at the announcements in your order of service. If you're on Zoom, there's a link to the order of service in the green box at the top of buff.org. Couple of things to note here. Our Monday evening Taizé services are back online and in person beginning the first Monday in October at 7 p.m.
And I will be leading a class with Bonnie Finney on Unitarian Universalism beginning on Sunday, October 9th. Again, all the details are in the order of service and in our weekly newsletter, which you can find on and subscribe to at buff.org.
Thank you, Kevin. It is tradition here at Buff to offer native lands affirmation. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples. Their presence is imbued in these mountains, valleys, waterways, and shorelines. May we nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors and the shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today. I'd like to invite Daria to come up. And as we light our chalice today, I invite those at home to join us by lighting your own respective chalices. I ask you to ponder times when you have been empathetic towards others, or when you have been on the receiving end of empathy. Empathy nourishes us. It reminds us we are not traveling life's journey alone. And now, if you will you join me in reciting Buff's covenant? Love is a spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. Thank you.
And please stand with me and join in song number 311 in the Gray Hymnal, Let It Be a Dance, number 311. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body burn to bend. And like a willow in the wind, let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. All right. And now I'd like to invite the children to come on up for a story. And you may be hesitant sometimes to come up here, but today we have a special guest, and I think you might want to come up close. come right up onto the stage.
And what I'll do is after the story, if you kids want, you could pet this dog, and I'll tell you a little more about him. But for right now, I'm just gonna, Audie down. He's just gonna rest right here, Audie down. He'll be very quiet, and his name is Audie, and I'm Jane. And I'm so happy to see you kids. It's so great to have you here at church. So thank you for letting me come. So Audie is a special dog. He's got a vest on, you might have noticed. That means he's a working dog. And I'm a school counselor, and he works with me at the school. He comes every day. His main job is he's called a school assistance dog. So his main job is, I'm a helper in the school. He helps me to help kids. And so I want to tell you a little story. Maybe some of you have been in kindergarten before and kind of remember, or maybe you'll be going to kindergarten. So Audie went out with me one day to recess, and because Audie is such a really nice, calm dog, kids love him at school. And so when I went to it was kindergarten recess, so when I went out there, it was sunny that day, and a lot of kids, he's kind of like the Pied Piper. Kids just come over, lots of kids want a chance to pet him, and they know all the rules about petting him. They always say, Ms. Beckel, can I pet him? And if it's a good time, I say yes, and then they pet him gently, and they're really good. They know kind of how we do it. So many kids gathered around him. I had him lie down like this, and the kids just kind of on their own were in this like little circle around Audie, and they were just petting him, and some of them would take a little wood chip and they'd just like gently stroke his fur, and he was just really happy. And then there was a little girl that came up to him, or came up to me, and her name, I'll call her Shyla. Shyla said to me, Ms. Beckel, I'm feeling sad. He's just stretching. Yeah, he's getting, yeah. You kids are just doing great with Audie. Anyway, the little girl, she said, Ms. Beckel, I'm feeling really sad about my grandpa again. And I knew Shyla, and she and I had talked before. Her grandpa had died about a year ago. And she said, I'm feeling really sad about my grandpa. And she said, can I talk to you? Well, there were a lot of kids around Audie, and I wanted those other kids a chance to pet him. So I said to her, Shyla, is it okay if I share with the kids what you just told me and how you're feeling? And Shyla said, yeah, that's okay. And these kids, being so kind-hearted, they kind of moved over a little so Shyla could sit in the circle around Audie. And Shyla, so I said to all the kids, I said, hey, kids, just so you know, Shyla is feeling a little sad because she's thinking about her grandpa. And I said, what can you do if you're feeling sad? Or what do you do when you're feeling sad? And a little girl looked up and she turned to Shyla and she said, and this is a true story, she said, you can eat ice cream, like that. And of course, being the grown-up there, I just thought that was so cute. But all the other kids also had these really neat ideas, like I bet you kids would. Like some of them said, you could ask to play with a friend, or you could ask for a hug. And so I tell you that story, not only because Audie is a special dog, but mostly because those kids, even though they were in kindergarten, they actually were showing empathy, which is this huge big word. But empathy basically is that they could imagine how they would feel if something happened to their grandma. They could imagine it, and they cared about how Shyla was feeling. So they imagined, oh, I would be sad too, and then they cared about Shyla, and they had an idea to kind of help cheer her up. And that was just a really, really wonderful thing that shows how even little kids have such big hearts and want to help each other. So you kids have just been great with Audie, and like I said, he comes every day to school with me, and he's specially trained. And so I think, are the kids going to be walking out? And I think I'll walk behind you kids if that's okay. And then if you choose, I'll kind of explain if you want to pet him or shake his hand or something like that, okay? Thank you for being such great listeners.
This morning, I want to share a true story that will resonate with me for the rest of my life. It's about human decency, justice, and empathy, and I hope you will find it inspirational. 10 years ago, when I was living in Renton, one of my friends at Fairwood United Methodist Church was third-generation Japanese American. He was the sensei. One Sunday morning, he informed me that his mother-in-law had died at the age of 92 earlier that week. He invited me to visit his family at a local funeral home where a small informal wake would be held prior to her burial in a local cemetery. When I arrived at the wake a few days later, I was disappointed to see that only my friend and his wife and his father-in-law, Mr. Okamoto, were present. Apparently, a few other visitors had already come and gone, but I could see the gathering was not attracting many supporters, and that saddened me. I stood over the casket of Mrs. Okamoto to pay my respects to someone that I did not know. Mr. Okamoto, who was 95, approached me and he thanked me for coming. He said he had a story he wanted to share with me. We retreated to the back of the chapel where we could talk. Mr. Okamoto explained he had moved up to the Seattle area from California when he was a teenager in the early 1930s. His family purchased farm property near Kirkland. I-405 now cuts through the land that the Okamoto family had farmed for several decades leading up to the war, World War II. And like his parents before him, Mr. Okamoto was a truck farmer. He grew crops, regularly transported the produce to grocery outlets in downtown Seattle where he sold them wholesale. Now in February 1942, 2 months after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt issued his notorious Executive Order 9066, ordering Japanese Americans to be held in camps because they were deemed a security risk. This at the height of the hysteria that gripped the American public immediately following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Over the years, there's been great debate over which term is appropriate to use to describe the facilities that held the victims of this Executive Order 9066. Concentration camps, relocation camps, internment camps. Today I will choose to use the word internment camps. Now in the winter of 1942, more than 120,000 Japanese Americans, 2/3 of whom were American citizens, were ordered to relocate to the internment camps located in remote areas of the western United States. And Mr. Okamoto and his family were ordered to report to a camp called Minidoka, located approximately 15 miles north of Twin Falls, Idaho. The designated gathering area for internees en route to Minidoka, where they would gather and prepare to be shipped out, was the Puyallup, Washington State Fairgrounds. Mr. Okamoto told me that during the intake process in Puyallup, he met a pretty young lady whose destination was also Minidoka. They quickly became friends. A year later, they were married at the camp at Minidoka. They spent 18 months living in tar paper-covered wooden shacks on an open, barren prairie. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire guard towers and patrolled by Army guards carrying guns. Food was mundane, life was not easy, but somehow the Okamotos lived their lives of deprivation and shame. 1944, following a Supreme Court ruling, most Japanese Americans being held behind those barbed wires were informed they were to be released, but where would they go? Many of the families who owned businesses, houses, farms, land, had them confiscated or occupied. And one of the many unhappy legacies of this Executive Order 9066 was the stealing of property from those held in the internment camps by citizens seeking to take advantage of the circumstances. Not every property owner suffered loss, but many did, never able to recoup what had been wrongly taken from them. Mr. Okamoto and his new bride prepared to return to their Kirkland farm, not having a clue about what had been happening with the property since the Okamotos left Kirkland for Puyallup. And all the relatives in the area had been sent away at the same time the Okamotos were ordered to report to Minidoka. No one knew what to expect once they returned to Kirkland. Approaching the property for the first time in nearly 2 years, the Okamotos were pleased to see the farm appeared to have been properly cared for. The house and barn were in excellent shape, and the chickens, cows, and pigs had been left behind 18 months earlier were awaiting their arrival. But who had lived there? Who lived there now, and would the Okamotos be able to resume their lives as before? No one was at the front door as they approached the house, so they entered it. 5 minutes later, there came a knock on the door, a familiar voice calling out, "Hey, anybody home?" It was next-door neighbor Tom Sheffield, and opening the door, Mr. Okamoto shook Tom's hand, beckoning him to come in. Tom said he was unable to visit. He had business to attend to, but he wanted to give something to Mr. Okamoto. He might find this interesting. Tom handed Mr. Okamoto a piece of paper. It was a deed to his farm. Tom, informing the Okamotos, now owned that farm outright. Tom had seen to it, while the Okamotos were at Minidoka, that their farm would be cared for, paid for. There was a stunned silence among the family. The Okamotos were overcome by their neighbor's decency, his generosity, his determination to make some sort of justice out of a terrible situation. At a time of widespread injustice, chaos, and retribution, a simple but profound gesture of kindness and understanding brought comfort and hope to the Okamotos. Here was a gesture of hope, grace, and empathy amidst all the deprivation and shame they had suffered at the hands of the U.S. government. But quite likely, the Okamotos were not the only family who were greeted in this manner as they came home. But it is safe to say many were left destitute, their livelihoods and homes now irrevocably lost. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rod. I invite you now to stop Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Get comfortable with your body in a position that feels natural. And stop. Stop thinking about empathy and wondering if you're empathetic enough. Stop worrying about doing it right. Stop for just a moment now wondering why other people aren't more empathetic. I'm hoping that this moment, basking in the good feeling of the story Rod just shared, we can find room for ourselves just to breathe without any expectations. Letting go of expectations. Let's go now into the embrace of silence without, of course, having any expectations of perfect silence, but just appreciating the warm embrace of community.
Hi, everybody. My name's Naomi Gary. Today, I'll be doing the Covenant of Beloved Community Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression, Anti-Ableism moment. Ableism is discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities or who are perceived to be disabled. Ableism characterizes people as defined by their disabilities and inferior to the non-disabled. I pulled that from Wikipedia. Most of you know me because of my activities here at Buff in the Black Lives Matter Ministry Action Team. But I also volunteer once a month for Humanitas. I highly recommend it. Last Wednesday, we helped 11 different people with 11 different needs. This is a brief story of one Humanitas recipient. Jane, not her real name, came to us for help. She told us about being almost 100% deaf in one ear. She told us about losing her steady job in accounting when the pandemic hit and the fitness club she worked at closed indefinitely. She told us about not being able to go to interviews due to her hearing loss. She told us about becoming homeless because she couldn't find a job. She told us how scary it is at the homeless shelter because she can't hear. She told us she needs $30 to buy a pack of hearing aids, hearing aid batteries, that would last about a month. $30. That's all she needed to get her life back on track, to get a job, to be housed, to have a normal life again. We gave her a $30 voucher to Fred Meyer's so that she could buy hearing aid batteries. Jane could be any one of us. Her so-called disability was almost invisible. I'm glad that hearing aids costs will soon go down when people can buy them over the counter, but you'll still need batteries, and you'll still need Humanitas. Thank you.
We're taking the collection now, right? Hymn of Promise? Yeah, the Hymn of Promise. All right. Would those who are here to sing the song Hymn of Promise come up now, please? There you go. In the bowl there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree, in cocoons a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the cold and snow of winter, there's a spring that waits to be. In this cycle through each season, may we turn delightedly. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery. Reconceived each generation, seeking truth and harmony. In our end is our beginning, in our time infinity. In our doubt there is believing, in our life eternity. In our death a resurrection, at the last a victory. For our love shall flow beyond us, further than we'll ever see.
Thank you, ensemble. We sang that yesterday for Alice Litton's memorial service, and it was very, very touching to be there and to honor Alice that way. In 1942, my father, his parents, and siblings lived in a farm near Mankato, Minnesota. Being of German ancestry, the Beckles had roots in one of the chief Axis powers which the United States was at war with. So one might reasonably assume the family to be a national security risk, or at least as much as the Okamoto family. I'm not sure, but my grandparents were probably the first generation of Beckles born in the United States, having come to the U.S. much more recently than many Japanese families. I feel so angry about how my fellow citizens of Japanese descent were treated at that time. And not just that they're treated indecently, being stripped of their rights and in many cases their property, but also that they're treated differently than my father and his family. I often wonder how this country would be different if all the Germans and Italians had been similarly rounded up. But that's not empathy, it's just intellectual curiosity. I also wonder how my own life would be different, but that's still not empathy, but it's a step closer. When Rod offered to tell his story in the context of empathy, it occurred to me that over the years, my awareness of this unequal treatment has triggered a variety of emotions in me. Maybe some empathy, but what I've been more conscious of is guilt, shame, sadness, which may be derivatives of empathy. But in any case, what I've been feeling most recently is anger, which is foreign emotional territory for me. Our stoic German family did not express anger. So how might anger interface with empathy? Sometimes I feel myself pushing back against the idea of empathy, the idea that we can and should feel what others are feeling, that we can and should listen more closely with our ears and our hearts so we can understand where others are coming from, respect their beliefs, yada, yada, yada. I push back, I think, and this is my own baggage, I'm sure, because I interpret the ideal of empathy as something I'm supposed to do 100% of the time with everyone I know or even think about. That's not going to happen. There are times I just can't imagine wanting to extend my understanding to perpetrators of harm, whether they're instigating harm out of selfishness or ignorance or habit, whether deliberately or by unconsciously playing out the rules of a violent culture. Sometimes I don't have it in me. That's the gist of what I have to say today. We all know what empathy is. You don't need me to tell you. Some of you are beautiful models of empathy. Thank you for your example. For those, however, who are so angry, afraid, or discouraged that you just can't imagine all or nothing empathy 24/7, I want to say, that's okay. That is, when you're not feeling very empathetic, I get it. I feel your pain. Empathy is instinctual in social animals. It feels like a miracle to me when I feel empathy for others, whether it's that I experience another person's pain or happiness. Let's not forget that feeling empathy is not just taking on another's pain and negative emotions. It's also positive emotions and the complex emotions like confusion or reverence, or the complex mix of grief and relief. All of that is empathy. It also feels like a miracle to me when other people experience empathy for me. Because how does that happen? I can't see the little fibers connecting us. For now, let's not worry whether our sense of connection to one another, our awareness of one another, our care for one another, whether that's in the air somewhere, in our genes, whether it's material, poetic, or divine. Now, just like it's instinctive to experience empathy, to feel it without even trying, it is just as natural to block it out. It's natural to feel it, and it's natural to block it out. Because we've been hurt. And when we're hurt, we naturally put up protective barriers. Then, without thinking about it, we may leave those barriers up when they're not needed. But sometimes they are needed. And it can be exhausting to constantly assess up or down, up or down. Frankly, at this point in my life, I have no illusions that I can break all of my defensive habits or eliminate all of my reactivity that causes me to put up barriers. I think I can, though. I think I have developed a habit of taking them down. Not the instant they go up, not 24/7, but I think it's possible to create habits of rousing self-awareness within ourselves so that we can recognize unnecessary defensiveness and find inner resources of strength, courage, and wisdom, or go out and pick up these resources elsewhere if we need to through exercise or music, games or friends, meditation, or cooking healthy meals, so that we can choose, not always, but sometimes, to remove the barriers. And to do this not just because we feel guilty. Empathy can also be highly rewarding, whether I'm vicariously enjoying the sounds of the kids playing next door or talking on the phone to someone who's upset. I can come out of either situation with a greater sense of well-being, a sense that being alive is pretty awesome. Empathy can be rewarding, and empathy can be exhausting. But anger is also exhausting, and so is shame and worry and discouragement. I know I'm not going to be fully in control of which of these I'm going to experience at every moment of every day. But I think I do have a greater sense of well-being when I connect with another human or other being and get this experience of two mirrors reflecting each other back and forth, like two mirrors facing themselves in the infinity of being that you experience in between. I've also developed a habit of recalling to myself that I am a part of the system. I am one with all of those who cause harm, as well as those who are being harmed. Sometimes it's easier for me to dwell in that form of universal empathy than to try to enter into the experience of another individual who I think of as inhumane. When I read the news these days, I find myself experiencing both empathy and anger. There is joy in the world and in the news. There is wonder and much to look forward to. But I'm also too conscious of people hurting. I don't know why I said two. I don't know why I emphasize on the two. I'm just saying, I'll say I'm very conscious of people hurting. People who are hurting others and people who are just hurting. It may be no different than 2 years ago or 80 or 800 years ago, but in my mind, for now, the primary causes of suffering aren't random. They aren't natural. They're interpersonal. And that can really get me down. And so I imagine I'm going to keep cutting back from reading and listening to the news. Not completely. But also I'm not going to be berating myself for being limited in my ability to empathize. And for now, while I totally accept that I am part of the interdependent web in which we are all one, and therefore I am one with those who harm as well as those who are harmed, I'm probably going to empathize with those who are harmed more than those who are causing harm. And I'd like to invite Erica forward to share with us some information about Humanitas. We take a collection each month to support local causes that we know are making a big difference in the lives of people. And so when the ushers come around after Erica speaks, I invite you to contribute generously. Everything you put in the basket, cash or checks, which should be written out to Buff, will go to Humanitas. Now, those if you explicitly want your check to go to Buff for your pledge payment, mark that down in the memo line. And those of you online, there will be a card up so that you can see the various options on how to give electronically.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning. Humanitas is an alms program. I don't know if you all know what we actually do, but it's a program where we provide small amounts of financial support to people in need, usually $50 to $75 or so. We're part of a network of churches here in Bellingham that does the same. So if someone comes to us, say, with a large utility bill, they're able to go to each of the churches and perhaps get enough money to pay it off. Humanitas and the other churches are involved in empathy in the here and now, one-on-one. Humanitas has been in operation since October 30th of 2013. We're starting our 10th year in November. So I was thinking, how do I pitch that so that I can reach a little more deeply into your pockets today? So I thought, okay, 10 years, statistics. Yeah, I love statistics. So, but then I had second thoughts and said, well, maybe telling them that we served 142 people this year isn't going to, do the job, really. Or that we have on our ledger 2,875 entries of clients we have interviewed over the last 9 years. But that's just statistics. That's not going to help. So let's see, what else? Well, I could kind of talk about the mix of things we provide. For instance, so I could maybe tell you about gasoline, 57%, or I could tell you about food, 11%, or utilities, 8%, but that's not going to do anything. That's not going to say what we really do. What's really going to talk to you and which talks to me are talking about the stories, the people that we help. But not just the gasoline or the utilities. Let's talk about the really interesting ones, the unusual ones. So I've got a short list. Bear with me. Every once in a while, during Christmas season, we have families come in who need money for presents for their children. That's always a joy because we're able to give them some money and everyone's smiling and happy when they walk out the door. Sometimes we help with veterinarian bills for people who are living alone. Our pets are our family in that situation, and we can help with that. But then we get some that are a bit more unusual. We once bought an anchor chain. It turns out this young man was living on his boat. And if you pull into the slips in the Bellingham Harbor, you have to pay a fee for every night. And if you actually have electrical and water hookups, it's like $30 a night. Can't do that. But if you anchor out, it's free. He needed an anchor chain, so we bought an anchor chain. Another fella came to us wanting a radio and a headset, earphones or earbuds. We thought, well, that doesn't seem like a necessity, until he explained that he was schizophrenic and that the radio and the earbuds would drown out the voices in his head. He got his radio. But the one that sticks in my mind, and this is from some years ago, was when a fellow came in and asked for help with tuition to comedy school. What? Well, we checked it out, made the phone call. It was legit. He was registered. He'd paid part of his tuition, but not all of it. And so we paid for tuition to comedy school. 8 or 9 months later, he reappeared at our door back there, not to ask for something, but to show us his certificate of graduation and to tell us that he was moving back east because he'd gotten his first paid gig as a stand-up comedian. Yes. So every week, we never quite know what's going to walk in that door, what need is going to come. But it is an act of empathy that we are able, as best we can, to fulfill that need. And which is why I'm digging as deeply as I can into your pockets right now. So give generously, and thank you for your support over these last 9 years. And on one last note, we have a couple of slots open for volunteers. We'll have a table downstairs so you can come and talk to us. It's a commitment, and sometimes it's difficult. Some of these stories are really horrendous that people bring to us. But if you're interested, come talk to us. Once again, thank you for all your years of support.
And now let's stand and sing together. It's number 368 in your gray hymnal. Now let us sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. All right. And let's read together our benediction. It's number 521 in the Gray Hymnal 521 for our benediction. May I be no one's enemy, and may I be the friend of that which is eternal and abides. May I wish for every person's happiness and envy none. May I never rejoice in the ill fortune of one who has wronged me. May I, to the extent of my power, give needful help to all who are in want. May I never fail a friend. May I respect myself. May I always keep tame that which rages within me. May I accustom myself to be gentle and never angry with others because circumstances. And let's read this last line together. May I know good people and follow in their footsteps. And let's circle around for freedom.
I'll be there in a second. 10 seconds.